Okay, good morning, classmates. I'm Cumagun, and I'm going to report on the role of restrictive emotionality, trait anger, and masculinity threat in men's perception of physical aggression. So, first, our topic, a discussion of our topic. Our topic is on aggression among Philippine inmates. There are very limited studies in the Philippine setting, and so I chose a journal that was about simply aggression among men. So, our research problems. How does the association between restrictive emotion and aggression occur? And does emotion dysregulation mediate the link between restrictive emotion and aggression in men? So, a few of the objectives of our studies. To investigate whether emotion dysregulation may explain the relationship that exists between individuals who endorse high levels of restrictive emotion and exhibit high levels of aggressive behavior, and to apply the structural equation model that examined the simultaneous and shared influence of distinct indices of emotional dysregulation as mediators and the link between emotional restriction and their use of physical aggression. So, a few of the concepts from this study. So, there's restrictive emotion. This is defined as the conflict concerning expressing emotions and feeling emotionally vulnerable. It is often identified as a key feature of traditional masculine norms. So, simply put, it's being unable to express what you feel. Another is emotional dysregulation. So, from the word itself, you can deduce that it is not regular. So Gratz and Romer define it as a multidimensional construct representing maladaptive responses to emotional states. So the dimensions of this include a lack of awareness, of understanding, acceptance of emotions, limited access to adaptive strategies, unwillingness to experience emotional distress, and an inability to control behavior. So the six indices in this experiment, um, what it was trying to measure in emotional dysregulation. So there's lack of clarity, limited awareness, desire to act impulsively, limited use of goal-directed and pro-social behavior, lack of alternative strategies, and non-acceptance of emotions. Next is threat to masculinity. Data suggests that a related situational factor, threat to masculinity, is a catalyst for aggressive intentions and behavior among men who rigidly adhere to masculine role norms. So, threat to masculinity is basically when men feel threatened, and in this experiment, this was measured through the RCAP in win or lose trials. So, the governing theory of this journal is the structural equation model. This theory demonstrated that specific facets of emotion dysregulation, namely limitation in one's ability to engage in non impulsive responses to emotions and to accept and endure difficult emotional states, emerge as the two strongest factors in an overall mediation model. So, among the six distinct indices, these were the two that were the strongest factors in the overall mediation model. So, the summary of method. So this study was actually a secondary analysis of Cohn, Seibert, and Zeichner's the role of restrictive emotionality, trait anger, and masculinity threat in men's perception and of physical aggression. Um, the previous study concluded that greater tendency towards restrictive emotion was shown to predict greater aggressive responding under laboratory conditions. So those who the previous study concluded that those who restricted their emotions were those who were more aggressive. Now, this current study added one factor, emotion dysregulation, which aimed to explain the relationship between restrictive emotion and aggressive behavior. So, the summary of this method. 128 undergraduate men were asked to complete a response choice aggression paradigm, or RCAP, which was a competitive reaction time task, in which participants were given the choice to shock or refrain from shocking an ostensible or fictitious opponent. So here, aggression was measured through the average intensity of shocks delivered by the participant, restrictive emotionality was measured using a subscale of gender role conflict scale, and emotional dysregulation was measured by the difficulties in emotion regulation scale. Also, the opponent evaluation scale, or OES, was used to assess the participants' opinion of their fictitious opponent. So, what is the answer to the research problem? Findings from a structural equation model showed that emotion dysregulation does mediate the association between restrictive emotionality and aggression. Specifically, this relationship appeared to be largely driven by a lack of acceptance and an inability to tolerate emotional experiences rather than an overall inability to regulate internal experiences. So, among the six indices, again, the two um, lack of acceptance and an ability to tolerate emotional experience were the two that were the strongest in the structural equation model. So, some key points of discussion. Did you know that displays of vulnerable emotions like sadness, guilt, and fear by boys and men are often punished or penalized by peers, which may lead to eventual control and limitation of such displays in order to avoid increased psychological distress and social rebuke? So, growing up, men are made to think that feeling vulnerable, sad and guilty, and scared are not as acceptable, which makes them, which could possibly make them um, le- control or limit their displays and emotion. So, indeed, studies document the stress associated with violations of traditional masculine gender norms is inversely related to men's expression of emotion. Also, did you know that for some men, aggression appears to function as a coping strategy to manage emotional dysregulation and regain control over interpersonal situations associated with feelings of vulnerability and negative affect arousal? So, based on all these findings, one can deduce that men have an inclination towards aggression. Hence, men are aggressive. Thank you, the end.
Okay.